We are live.
All right. Just wait a few seconds here for everyone to get connected. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. My name is Vanessa. I'm with the Dallas Public Library. We host this program in partnership with the Department of Environmental Quality and Sustainability. Just a few housekeeping things today. So you will be muted and your video will be disabled during the presentation. If you have any questions though, you can put those in the chat and we'll get to those as we're able to. Let's see, what else am I forgetting? You do so many of these and then you just, sometimes the things just leave your head. So this is being recorded. And so you have to accept that agreement that it will be recorded. And then later, if you want to rewatch it, it'll be posted on YouTube or you can share it because we're gonna get a lot of really great information today. So we're sharing. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bob with OEQS and let him introduce our speaker for today. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Vanessa. Well, it's a interesting transitional day today. I was just talking with our guest speaker and about what's being planted in her universe today. And it's a lot different than what's being planted in my universe today, which is okay. You know, for those of you who are gardeners and also have children, I think you'll enjoy today. I've known Dawn now for probably a year or so, and she is responsible for school gardens in Richardson. And they've had some unique opportunities there to get gardens being vibrant. We find that sometimes the school administrations don't quite understand what we're trying to accomplish. And sometimes we're at odd purposes, but Dawn has remained steadfast in her advocacy. And I think the kids at the schools are benefiting greatly from that. So we're gonna let her talk about anything she wants today. And if you have questions, pop them in. But Dawn Cleaves, take over.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to try not to wander too far afield, but we're talking about volunteering in the school garden. So we are going to start right in with why do we volunteer? And if you look across America, we have many, many, many opportunities to volunteer. I actually hadn't realized they just did a big volunteer push in Clyde Warren Park the other day. And people volunteer for a variety of things. If you volunteer at the opera, maybe it's because you want to see the opera for free, or maybe it's because you want to learn something. And you, by volunteering your time and doing a job or a task at the same time while you're enjoying something else that's going on, or while you're helping out, it's really a win-win situation. So the very first reason that I find that people volunteer is because they want to learn something new. And I still volunteer. I have my real job and my volunteer job, and I help out at a garden. And the director there has become my garden mentor over the last couple of years. He's probably saying I'm a bit of a delinquent volunteer right now because things have gotten busy, but I still pop in. But I've learned so much from him, and the fact that I go back, gardening is seasonal, and every time you go, it's different. And the fact that you go again and again allows you to just really expand your depth of knowledge, because you don't just see this snapshot of what it is right here and now, but you see how things change over time and how a gardener reacts to the different things that happen over time, because we are a responsive type of task. We can't just plan everything out by the calendar and do it and everything goes like clockwork. You plan it out, something happens, something changes, you replan. You plan it out, something changes, you replan. Whether it's weather, whether it's COVID, whatever, things change, and you just kind of keep reorganizing until you get a successful harvest. So learning is probably the #1 reason that people volunteer. The other thing people volunteer is for social. So we are social animals, humans, and most of us like to talk to someone. Maybe we're not super social and don't want to talk to lots of people, but we like to have a few people around once in a while. So when I work, I have what's called the 3-foot rule, which we kind of changed it a little bit to the 6-foot rule for COVID. But the 3-foot rule means that you work within 3 foot of somebody else so that you can gossip. That's so we can talk, we can share what our children are doing if we have children. And we can just share what's going on in our lives. And if we're both there doing gardening, we likely have similar interests. We can talk about our home gardens or the school garden and what we did last time we were there or last time we saw each other. And some of my friends that I developed, I started out, 2012, I was a parent volunteer in my own kids' garden, kids' school garden. And the friends that I made there are still friends of mine today, and I still see them. And every now and then I drag them in with me on my school gardens that are up in Richardson now that have nothing to do with any of our kids. But we enjoy the time with each other and the time with like-minded people. And then, of course, the other reason to volunteer is that feel-good thing of, you're helping somebody else. And our kids connect with gardens in a way that they don't connect in the classroom. And it gives many kids an opportunity to be shining stars when maybe they're not a shining star otherwise. And so people volunteering and coming to our gardens and helping clean our gardens, plant our gardens, water our gardens, all those things that gardens need, makes it possible for those kids and their teachers to come out there and not worry that there's, the garden's out of control and they're going to get sticker burrs on their socks or whatever. So when we help maintain the garden, we know we are helping others. And the kids can sense the fact, even if we're not working side by side with the kids, when they see a garden that is well maintained and clean and all that and watered and healthy, they feel that someone else has come in and cared for them. And I work primarily with our Title I schools. And it really means a lot to those kids to know that someone else cares about them. So I'm going to drop a real quick, let's see if I get the right post. In the chat is a form if you would like to enter your name and some quick questions about where you would like to volunteer. Let's see, what did I ask? What you would like to learn if you want to learn something. Where do you want to volunteer? You can name either the school or the school district. And if you're part of a group, what group it is that you would like to maybe volunteer with as a group. So we are going to move on. So there's different ways of volunteering. And when I first contacted Vanessa about doing this class, we were in the middle of summer and COVID was coming down and we thought things were going great. And I was ready to gear up for full-on volunteers face-to-face with the kids all in. And that's not what happened. Delta came along and changed our plans and we all kind of juggled. And so we are back to what we were before with our more restrictive volunteer rules, but it doesn't mean that we can't volunteer. So the different ways that we can volunteer, you can either do independent and small group tasks. Some of these can even be done at home. We call them virtual, but that means you can do them at any hour. If you're a carpenter, there's building projects. You can build a weather station or a garden scale or a water station. I have some volunteers that will help sprout seedlings so that we can, instead of having to coordinate with with purchasing and doing, going to the stores and getting all the right plants, we have volunteers that start our seedlings for us. And my volunteer this fall has told me he has 800 seedlings. So we will be sorting those out later and getting those in the ground. Those are all brassicas, which is part of our 4th grade curriculum. We also have things like stuffing envelopes. So if you're not a gardener and don't know how to sprout seedlings, then there is stuffing envelopes, and maybe cutting out things that are part of a lesson plan for the teachers. There's also collecting seed heads. So this is great for all of those who are like, everything around me is dead, because we are looking for the plants to be dead. We are looking for those seed heads to form. I've got a few here. Those seed heads are great investigations for our students to understand that life cycle of the plant, that yes, it's dead, but this is part of the life cycle. And those seeds, if we can collect them, we can share them out to everybody, or we can also package them. Maybe you use it as a fundraiser to fund your garden, but they have to have those seed heads. And when we have volunteers collect them from their own gardens, we are cross-pollinating. And we are bringing in different genetics from different people's houses and putting them together and creating a very strong and diverse and genetically vibrant ecology for our region. So I love having volunteers bring their own seed heads, and they may have varieties of plants that I don't have access to anywhere in my gardens. So it's wonderful to have that great sharing going on. And I see someone in from Brentfield. Yes, that's one of our elementaries that people are doing lots of virtual these days. And so let's see, so that's independent and small stuff. And that's kind of a one-time project. You have something come up, it's time to collect seeds, or it's time to stuff envelopes. It's a task kind of thing. The next thing is maintenance, and it's more regular than that. And I used to love, when I dropped my kids off at school, I would go to the garden after drop off. I would park away from all the drop off madness, and I would walk over to the school with my kids in the morning, say my goodbyes. And then I would go to the garden and spend about 30 minutes once a week watering. And there were a couple other people that did it too. And we traded off, and sometimes we organized to get together. And so there was maybe 3 or 4 of us, but just that little bit of very regular maintenance allowed our gardens to thrive in a way that they just don't do when you just do one big push here or one big push there. You really, gardens, one of our other local gardeners, I can't remember his name right now, but he often says that the best thing for a garden is or the best fertilizer for a garden is the gardener's shadow. And that means you physically, the gardener or our kids or whoever, has to be in the garden. Your body there, you see things and you respond to the garden and you do what it needs. And so it's a very interactive, responsive thing. So that type of garden is also very tied into that 3-foot rule of making sure you're close enough you can gossip. The next thing is our big garden large work days, which we do schedule large work days because there are big things that need to be done periodically in the garden. When you come back from summer, we often need a clean out, or going into summer, we want to do a clean out of our beds and get them ready for the summers to make sure that by the time we get to fall, we've got a clean rollover into our next crops, because the kids need to be planting as soon as possible. Once COVID lets up, then we're back with face-to-face with the students for our volunteers. Our volunteers will eventually be allowed back in the schools, and you can read books in the library. You can help them do garden activities in the classroom if they're sprouting some seeds in there, or you can help them in the garden, because when you have lots of little investigators running around the garden, it's always good to have extra adults to kind of keep a supervision on people. So that's a really great thing to do. Let's see, we have a question down here of what are the plans for supporting pollinators. So part of starting the seedlings, most of our gardens have habitat gardens. And when we do our habitat gardens, we like to focus on butterflies and birds, because people are still a little squeamish about bees. We love our bees and we want to support our bees, but we don't want to have a garden that attracts primarily bees. Bees, we let be secondary in our school gardens, and we focus mostly on butterflies and on birds. And all of our seeds that we collect are part of that. And I actually am working on a lesson right now, which, can we see that? Maybe I need more light. It's how do seeds travel? And so it's fun when you collect those seeds, especially the milkweed for the monarchs. Those have wonderful little fibers that can fly away in the wind. And the kids don't really understand that nature can be so delicate and soft. And that's a wonderful experiment for them to see how these different seeds travel. I have right here, I've got my carrot seeds, which they kind of look like Velcro, and they do the sticker thing where they hitchhike on other animals. And we've got some other, Greg's Mist Flower is another one that's a flyer that has a little bit of fibers that will help the seeds fly away. So yeah, we are currently limited, but if you're going into these gardens and you're doing a little bit of maintenance now and then, that little bit of maintenance, we like to call it our garden ninja, or we sometimes call it our garden magic. And so it's volunteers go in, parents go in, community members go in and do little fixes. And ideally, you're going to go in and check with the school first, and get in touch with your garden coordinator. Hopefully all of our schools have an on-site garden coordinator. It may be a teacher, it may be someone else at the school, it may be a parent. But it's nice to know what's going on in the garden so that you're connecting and you're working with them and not just totally out on your own, although I have done some just totally rogue gardening. But it's best to know what's going on and make sure that you're helping their goals and their plans. So if you can, don't visit the office. Please don't show up in their office right now. Please give them a phone call and let them know that you are interested in helping weed or water or do tasks when the students are not there. And that way they don't instantly freak out that you're trying to come in with the students. Most of our schools have Volley, which is the sign up. And so Vanessa, if you want to share your screen, I don't know if does it let me talk while you share your screen?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you share your screen and I'll keep talking. If you can, because I don't know how to get it up on the screen.
You may share the Garden Ninja?
Yeah, share our Garden Ninja.
All right.
I'm sorry, I found.
Ninja.
Go ahead.
Okay, let's see. Can y'all see that?
Ta-da!
It's a little Garden Ninja gnome.
A fun thing.
Yeah, it was given to my sister when she worked at a school garden. They called her the Garden Ninja because they would show up and things were just magically done in the garden.
Awesome. Yeah, so we come in and we do things, and the kids do notice and they're like, oh wow, someone planted this, or oh, they cut that off, that's good because that was in our way, and whatnot. So it is definitely appreciated. So now I'm going to go a little bit into the types of gardening and help you can do with little communication with your garden committee, because generally we want our gardens at our schools to be logical and clean and simple so that anybody can come into the garden, any teacher can come in and feel safe and controlled and know that there's going to be things for them to see, but it's not going to be dangerous. And so the first thing is to just watering. So this isn't so much danger. This is just a live garden versus a dead garden. And in Texas, it is, in Texas, we have dry spells, and even our habitat gardens, we can make our habitat gardens live through most droughts, but they do better if they get at least a half an inch of water or so per week. So if you've gone an entire week without any rain, you want to go ahead and give them a little bit of water. As far as our vegetables go, they're going to want more water, and they're going to want more like an inch per week, which I like to say, if you're hand watering, you're going to gently water above your garden until you see the water kind of puddling on top. And then you're going to walk away and let it soak in, maybe water the bed next to it. And then you're going to come back and water it again till it's puddling on top. Then you go back to another one, let that one soak in, come back, and you're going to do that 3 times that you want it to puddle on top. And that way, you know that water is soaking down deep. The real idea here is that you want that water where your roots are, and you want your roots as deep as possible in order to make them survive the dry spells. So when you first plant your seed's at the very top of the soil. So that means you actually don't care about watering too deeply, but you want to water more frequently to make sure that water is right where that seed is and right where its shallow roots are. And over the next few weeks, you want to start watering deeper and more infrequently so that you're encouraging those roots to get deeper and deeper into the soil. Any questions about watering? Some gardens have municipal water hoses and other ones have rainwater. And this is one thing that you do need to make sure you either have a water key or you have directions from them on how to get the water started, because it's different for many different schools. And then if you go to weeding, when you're weeding, that's a little difficult. You go into somebody else's garden and you don't know what they planted. So how do you know what their weeds are? Well, there's some simple rule of thumbs that can get you started. Probably the very first and easiest thing is the paths, because our paths do tend to fill with weeds unless they're complete concrete sidewalks. And so if the paths are done with mulch, the more mulch you put down in those paths and the more times you lay your cardboard down, the easier it is to pull the weeds, because that soil is becoming looser and looser. So that's one of the reasons why we like to use mulch in our paths. Other paths are decomposed granite, which are a little more difficult. You need to be scratching stuff out. And pulling them. And our kids, you may come out there and see that someone tried to weed and they've ripped all the tops off and left all the roots. And we accept whatever it is that the kids do. And that is also why all levels of gardening are welcome, because you're going to be better than our kids, just saying. You know, do your best and it's all helps. Another way to do weeding is to do species identification. So if you see one type of plant everywhere in the garden, it is not likely we planted that one plant everywhere in the garden. Like one example is one of my schools is Dover, and it's got Johnson grass. And everywhere you look, you will find Johnson grass. And so that is a good indicator that that is not an intentionally planted plant and that it is a weed that needs to be pulled out. Bermuda grass is going to be one of those similar ones, along with nut grass. But if you look and you see a plant and it's a type of leaf and you look at that leaf structure and you see it only in one spot, then you might want to leave it until you have someone that knows what's going on. If it's only in this one spot, but not over there or over here, then that's more likely an intentional plant that was planted there. And there are some, like the turf grass weeds and stuff, there are some native plants that people are going to debate whether they're weeds or not. And my definition of a weed is a weed that a plant in a place that you do not want it. And so you've got to be a little careful about blanketly defining things as weeds, unless of course it's Johnson grass, which is an invasive in Texas. So you do, looking at the location is probably the best way to know if something's a weed. And then when we get inside our raised beds, our vegetable beds, hopefully our kids have labeled their plants. If they have not labeled the plants, you look for the rows. We try to plant in rows. Some of our beds plant square foot gardening, and you're looking for seedlings that sprout that have the same first true leaves. And if you see a row, and this is true leaf, true leaf, true leaf, all looking exactly the same, and then there's this one out of line that has different leaves, that's likely a weed, but you can be looking on the internet to identify those leaves for your vegetable gardens and see if those are the right ones or not. Let's see. So weeding, some people are like, oh, weeding is such a job. And other people like me think that it's absolutely zen, because there is quite the feeling if you choose an area, and you don't want to be overly ambitious, but if you choose an area and say, you know what, I'm going to spend 30 minutes here and I'm just going to clean out this spot. And then at the end of that 30 minutes, you have this beautifully clean area, and maybe you've mulched it or something to make sure that the weeds don't come back instantly. But it's really satisfying to see that you made that progress. And then the next time you're going to build onto that. So the next time, maybe if you see any new sprouts in that spot, weed them first so you maintain that clean area, and then expand just a little further somewhere close by. And that's a great method to kind of expand the maintenance area of the garden. Because if you work here and then you work here, but you don't keep this up, this is going to fill up again and you're going to have to start over. And that's not the kind of thing that we want to be doing. And always remember, having a friend with you, many hands makes light work. And as far as the decomposed granite, I do have a YouTube video out there on how to use a hoe to scrape the top surface and cut off your weeds in decomposed granite. And if you get that down low, that is a way of maintaining decomposed granite, which can sometimes be difficult. So another type of garden magic that we do is spacing. So I will go out to the school garden after the kids have come out and planted, and I will see all of my seeds, their seeds, all of our garden seeds, all in the same exact spot. There's this whole bed and all their seeds are right here. And trying to untangle that mess can be awfully crazy. And so what we end up doing is we look and we try to find the same seeds. If we've got the same seeds, that's the best. And we'll go plant again. And so we reseed to correct their mistake. We will leave some of their seeds there overly done so that they have what's in education, they're calling it a comparative investigation. So they have something to compare of how does this plant grow when it's spaced out versus when it's crowded. And that way it becomes educational. The mistakes they make are not mistakes. They're just another learning opportunity. But we do want to have the example of them also spaced out. So that's one of the types of garden ninja activities you could come in and do late at night, is you see them spaced out or all crowded up, and you're going to plant additional seeds spaced out. Now, if your garden leader says, hey, we did plant this, but it's a warm season crop and we're rolling over into the fall now, so I'm going to give you different seeds. And then the kids get to see that that's a totally different plant coming up. And they'll compare the new leaves of the ones they planted versus the new leaves of the other plant. So that's a different type of comparison they can make. Another thing that kids might do, I saw some of them doing it the other day, is we like to give them their finger and we say, okay, here's your green beans. We lay out your green beans. And they're going to come along and push them down into the soil. And we tell them to go this far. And then you look over and one of the kids is down up to their elbows in the soil. And you're like, okay, that seed's a little deep. If you catch it when they're doing it, you'll, tell them to try again, and you put another seed right next to it and make it go a little shallower. Or this is the kind of thing where you come back the next, later in the week, and your garden volunteers say, okay, we're going to just replant all together because I think all of these seeds are too deep and there is no way that seed is going to get to the surface. So that's another time that we replant. But our number one goal, especially now with things even more challenging than they've been in the past, is that they see something grow. They may not get to plant it. They may be on quarantine when their class is planting or whatever, but we want something in the garden for them to see at different stages of life cycle. And we want them to be able to come out and journal about it, and maybe come harvest time, collect some kind of harvest on their own. Shared plants. So sprouting seedlings is one thing, and I'm going to run away from my camera real quick because I have this just in the other room and it was supposed to be next to me. I'll be right back. Vanessa, check question.
If you have any questions for Dawn so far, feel free to put them in the chat. I know there's some questions about when and where people can volunteer, Dawn. But I think if you fill out that form that Dawn dropped in the chat, I think we can get back to you on where you can volunteer at.
Yes. Okay, so now, where did it go? So this is Zexmenia. It's a plant that we use in our habitat gardens. And one of the things is plant propagation. That whole sharing of gardens are all about sharing. And it's a wonderful thing for our kids to learn about, is that gardening doesn't have to cost a ton of money, and we can do it for free. And one of the things I teach both our volunteers and our students is how to take a cutting, find the nodes, pull off the leaves that are going to be underwater or in the soil, and then they plop them down and they can root their own transplant to put in their garden. And I thought I had one full of roots to show you guys. And of course, now I'm not finding it. And I bet it fell out on my counter or something like that. But as I teach more and more people how to do this, we increase our diversity in our habitat gardens, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we like to have the students do this, but having volunteers do our backup, you may see a theme here. Our theme is that our volunteers are backups because, well, you have to realize that the main students that do the most gardening in the gardens are going to be our pre-K and kinder. And their success rate is a little so we help them out, you know. But yeah, this is starting to put on roots at the nodes, and there's just, I don't think there's any way. I thought I had a bigger one that's going to show off on the camera, but I don't think these that I'm finding now are showing on the camera. But you can also divide plants. We just divided some obedient plant to several schools, and this summer, going into the summer, we were dividing Greg's Mist from several of the school gardens. And one of the awesome things as a volunteer is one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you. So you can take home some of your own plants from these gardens. You know, as long as you're there helping us make some for other schools, you can take some for yours too. And I periodically have volunteers come to my house to help dig up the extras that I have at my house to be taken to the schools. And I love for my volunteers to plant some of them at home and plant some of them at the school garden, because the school garden ones may or may not thrive. And if you have them at home and yours are starting to thrive, then we have that much more inventory to pull from when we need to replace the ones at the schools. All right, some basics about what does volunteering with the schools look like right now? Right now, most volunteers are not allowed in the building at all. So if your garden's a courtyard garden, you may be out of luck entirely. But you can probably find another garden close by at a different school that is going to be outside and accessible without going into the building. You need to bring your own tools and your own gloves and your own water so that you're not sharing things. You need to do whatever business you need to do before you go into the before you get to the school. And then you also need to do Volley, which is the volunteer sign-up software. And that volunteer sign-up software, the districts use, several of the districts use. You log in, you create a login, and then you are going to be put through a background check, because all of our students, anybody who works with students or has the potential to work with students, needs to have a background check. And there is also generally on-demand orientation. So you'll go through a slideshow, and I'm not sure if it has a quiz at the end, but you need to at least go through the slideshow and do whatever is given to you by the Volley. And that's the general Volley link, and there's also district Volley links. So your specific school district, if you know which school district you want to volunteer in, you're going to want to click on their link because it'll be specific to their school district. Inside Volley, you generally get to select a cause that you want to focus on. And they have education, they have several different causes, but the one that is listed as environmental is where most of your garden activities and opportunities will be. And so if you click on environmental, that will allow you to be getting emails that let you know when volunteer activities are happening. And then the other thing is, so you'll get on there. You also have the opportunity to click on which schools you want to volunteer at. And it's kind of nice if you're really looking to learn gardening, it's nice to click several schools so that you can bounce around, because when you see the way it's done at one school and then you see it the way it's done at another school, there's slight differences and it might help you out. And to see the differences of how things are done at one garden or how things are done at another garden. And also different gardens have different resources as far as their community support. And so I was one of those weird parents when I came to volunteer. I think it was Christmas and we were making the little gingerbread houses out of graham crackers with my kindergartners. And I remember going in, I walked past one of the kindergarten classes and there were no parents there. And it was just the teacher trying to figure out how to do this activity with all of her students. And then I went to the next class, which was my kids' class, and they had 10 parents. And I went over to the teacher and I said, I think you have enough help. And I gave my daughter a hug and I said, I'm going to go help the other class and I'll see you later. And I went over and I helped the other class. And my daughter's like, my mom's weird anyway. But it really meant a lot to that other teacher to realize that, she did have some help too. And our classes just aren't always balanced in the sense of having volunteering parents, same as our schools. And so if you find one school has a large population of volunteers and you have the opportunity to help out at another school, kind of take that opportunity to go and help them. They will really, really appreciate it. And that's about what I've got for you guys. This was a shorter lesson than some of them. Some of them might go on forever. Any other questions?
Feel free to put the questions in the chat if you have them. I put for DISD because I feel it's probably the largest district.
Right.
I dropped their volunteer link in there, but if you have, like Don said, if you have a local district or local school you're interested in, just call them. I'm sure they're always looking for ways people can volunteer safely and
call your school office.
Yeah. And I also put a link in there a little bit earlier. It doesn't have all the school gardens on it. It has the ones that mainly donate food, but
Right.
It's a good starting point if you're looking for some in your area to start there maybe. If you don't have kids in school, so you're not familiar with whatever local schools are. And let's see. I know you mentioned, Don, it can be tricky getting resources for these school gardens sometimes. Do you have any tips for people?
Oh, you're reminding me. Yes. So one of the things that I train people to do, not that it takes a whole lot of training, dumpster diving. Dumpster diving and or bulk trash pickup. I have some parents that troll the curbs, and there are several things that are wildly helpful to our schools that you may not guess otherwise. One would be mini blinds. If you see mini blinds on the curb, the vinyl kind, if you break those apart and take the individual blinds and cut them, you can write on them in a pencil and they make great plant markers. Another thing is lumber. As many of us know, lumber has gone sky high pricing wise, and it's kind of on a roller coaster these days. And so you really don't know what's going to happen. I've seen things saying that lumber prices were going to go down and then they came right back up again. So if you find some lumber on the side of the road and you are wanting to build something with it, I don't advise you to just collect a bunch of it without a purpose. But if you have talked to your garden and you know that they want something, you can keep an eye out and you'll find stuff. Logs. are always good. We use logs to line our garden beds and our habitat beds because it becomes instant bug habitat, and the kids just roll over the log and they're going to see all these decomposers down there eating the log and living in the dirt below the log. So I look for logs that are 6 to 8 inches around and 18 to 24 inches long. And that's a good size. That's big enough that it stays put, but it's small enough that you can pick it up and move it without hurting yourself. Please don't hurt yourself trying to get that really beautiful giant, tree cookie. I think any of us that are garden nerds like myself have seen those giant tree cookies and go, oh, I want that. And you go try to pick it up and it's not a smart idea. And then what else I got some straw from bulk trash, which Halloween is coming up, and many of people in the area, they decorate their landscape out front with bales of hay or bales of straw. And that is wonderful to use as a brown in our compost year round. We can keep that bale kind of somewhere in the garden. And then as the kids are doing composting, they can add that in as their browns, and it's a really quick decomposer. So it makes fast compost. Anything else you can think of that we should be picking up off the curb?
Oh, I don't know. My sister lives in a neighborhood where they're still building houses, and so she would talk to the builders because they had big dumpsters, where they throw off. Like she got a lot of really good lumber for school projects from those offcasts. Like they're either miscut lumber or in pieces. So yeah, if you're friends with a builder, that's even better. You can get a lot of stuff that they just chunk.
Right.
Yeah.
A builder or a tree company for those logs.
Yes. So there's a question about do you also volunteer at community center gardens, or is it specific to gardens and schools? I think a lot of the same principles apply, right, for community gardens, like to check in with whoever is the community garden organizer if you're wanting to volunteer there.
Yeah, the difference is that a community garden will often have purchased plots. And so someone owns a plot. And so you don't really want to go in and be touching their stuff. I'm sure they would be happy for you to weed the paths. That's not going to be a problem. But you do want to connect with their leadership. And some of them, I know some of those gardens have food pantry beds. So they'll have a section of the garden that'll be rented out to people, but then other beds will be specifically for the food pantry, and those will have rotating volunteers. So those are opportunities to be helping out.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? I will mention, I'll do a plug for the seed library at the Dallas Public Library. If your school garden is ever in need of seeds, or if you yourself need some seeds, we have seeds available. Right now, the 6th floor is being renovated, so it's currently located on the 5th floor. So this is a good question. Can you talk a bit about collecting seed heads? Like what types are good to collect?
Yes, I can. So this is carrots, and carrots is a biennial. So you've got to leave it in the soil an extra long time to get to the seed head stage, but that does happen in some of our gardens. And they have little, these you just pull off the top, and that's a real easy processing. This one right here, it's dropping the seeds on my keyboard. But it's purple coneflower, it's prickly. And another gardener showed me that if you take these, you put them in a container with the lid and you shake them really hard, the seeds actually fall out, and then you can take away the seed head part and the seeds will be down inside the container. We collect mustard seeds sometimes from our gardens, and also wheat. We grow wheat so that our kids can learn that the cereal crops come from plants also, because that's a little further disconnect to understand that bread comes from a plant also, because it doesn't look like an apple or a banana. But so processing wheat and processing mustard seeds, they have all of these plant parts holding those seeds together. And so you have to thrash them and you smash them all up and beat them up. And then you're going to do a process called winnowing, where you take all of that mess that you just made, smashing them up, and you're going to pour from one bowl to another bowl, back and forth. And when you pour back and forth across those bowls, you're going to do it in front of a fan, or if I have the kids, they'll take a poster board or something and make a fan out of their hands and wave it away. And the light bits should fly away, and the seed parts will fall back into the next bowl. So as you go back and forth, you're getting rid of all those light bits of hull and stem parts and whatnot, and the dust and whatever's blowing away while the seeds continue to fall down. And you'll end up with clean seeds that if you have wheat seeds, you can then grind that up and make that into your flour and make your bread. Or if you have mustard seeds, you can put it in a mortar and pestle and grind it up and you'll have mustard. And I have 2 videos on both of those seed types on my YouTube channel. It's just Dawn Cleaves. It's for kids, so there's no commenting. It's just, but straight up videos on how to in doing that. We also collect, this one is a zinnia, and zinnias are wonderful summer flowers that are beautiful, and they can, they're great for the pollinators, and they're also great for bouquets. And I find that finding some kind of cut flower to cut and take into either the teacher's workroom, teacher's lounge, helps remind our teachers that they have this wonderful resource outside to go to them. I could show you, this was my sunflowers from a video that I didn't quite finish yet, but they have not survived. They're doing the second part of their life, and I have their pollen has fallen onto a leaf down below, but that's part of the education, is for the kids to see that pollen being separate from the flower. And so collecting flowers in the garden is a great way to encourage other people to participate in the garden, because flowers just make people happy. I have, this one is Rudbeckia. It is a type of a coneflower variety. It's actually a really tall Rudbeckia, which I hadn't seen before, but a friend gave it to me. And so we will be collecting and harvesting these seeds to share. And then there's other plants that are best done by division. Is there any other specific seeds? There's watermelon. If you go to a farmer's market, maybe still now, look for Legacy. Legacy watermelon is an heirloom, and so those seeds will be true to type. That means that your seeds will produce the same thing you started with, whereas if it's a hybrid, you're not really sure what genetics you're getting. But a good old seed watermelon is something kids haven't seen, or not as many kids have seen these days. So you can get the, yes, I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat. And yes, the reason we put the sunflowers in a cup is because as long as the sunflowers are outside, the bees go and get all of that pollen, and there's nothing left to see. But as second you cut those flowers off and take them inside away from the bees, the flower keeps putting out that pollen, and all of a sudden you see it because you're like, oh, it's still here now. There's a video I just posted the other day on bees and sunflowers, and I was having trouble videoing the bees. And so finally I cheated and I cut off a bunch of sunflowers, took them in so they were totally covered with pollen, and then put them back out again, but a cluster of sunflowers. And I got my bees to be where my camera was, which worked out very nicely. And so, so yes, complete seed heads for teaching. I like the kids to do the smashing. The question is, so are you looking for seeds for the schools or complete seed heads for teaching? And we do a little bit of both, but I really do want the seed heads, which is not something you can just purchase off a catalog. I've been told, why don't you just buy what you need? And I'm like, well, that's a little hard. And until you get that garden established and going, I've got a couple of gardens that you can go out there and you'll find the seed heads in the garden. But some of them, either I've had times where I have people who maintain the garden super tidy and they cut off every spent flower before they produce seeds. And then I have the more wild ones, which tend to have really great opportunities to collect seeds. But we want our kids to see that process and connect the fact that what used to be a flower now has the seeds, and this is the life cycle of plants, and that you need that interaction of a pollinator or the wind or something that does pollinate it to get to the seed part of the life and get it to mature. And then also understand that if they cut it off too early, the seeds haven't matured yet. And so they still need that life from the stem to finish the maturation process to a point. And when that stem is completely brown, then you know for sure that you can cut it and it's a mature seed. Some of the seeds will mature a little earlier than that, but you kind of get in this iffy gray area, depending on the variety of plant.
One of my favorite things to save seeds from is lettuce, because I think it looks so cool when the lettuce bolts. I mean, it's not edible anymore, but it produces beautiful flowers that the bees love too, and you can get some seeds out of it. And it's always shocking when people see pictures of like, what's that plant? It's like, that's lettuce.
Right. And it's one of our flyers. So people don't expect that once they see that flower, they realize that it's an aster and it's part of the aster family, and that it has the poof, like it's like a teeny tiny miniature dandelion. And those, particularly for romaine lettuce.
It's a cool process to watch. Let's see, do we have any other questions for Don? Well, I'll ask them, like, what do you find, like, if someone's like, I don't know if anybody here is maybe like their school doesn't have a school garden, but they'd like to start one. Do you have any advice for people who are wanting to start school gardens at their school?
For starting your school garden, first you want to get your school on board or your PTA on board. You don't want to go after it alone. I do recommend a habitat garden first, as it is the easier thing to get started and it has the most connections to your curriculum. And the vegetable gardens are always awesome, but it's a little more high maintenance, and a habitat garden can be lower maintenance, which until you build your volunteer base, it's hard to maintain a garden that has vegetables in it. So you really want to get those volunteers first before you expand into your vegetable gardens. And you're going to need to connect with the principal and facility services to make sure that where you're putting the garden is appropriate for the school, making sure you have enough sunlight and access to water. And always start small. You can always expand later. You can plan to have space to expand, but you really want to start small. So this one is actually blue mist flower that I have, and it has seeds, but I have not really noticed it to reseed very well, and we tend to divide it. But it may be that it's dropping its seeds very close to itself and it's actually sprouting from seeds nearby. And I find that ignoring seeds, especially native seeds, you get better germination than if you take those seeds inside and try to grow them like a human grows plants, because humans do things different than nature would like. When I'm not actually looking for the seeds for the students and I just want to quickly seed an area, I will take those seed heads, I will throw them on the ground whole, and I will step on them, twist my foot to grind them into the soil a little bit, and I will walk away. And nature decides if they sprout or don't sprout. And I know some of them need to be cold stratify, which means that they're going to need to go through the winter cycle outside. A lot of people want to go put them in the refrigerator and count number days and a moist napkin and all that kind of stuff. I just assume let nature do it. But so when I did mist flower in my garden this spring, and I divided it, and we just went to a place that had it very, I planted little plugs, about like 3-inch plugs that we dug up. It looked like I killed them, and I spaced them out in my garden probably about every foot or so, and they have completely filled in just in one season. So Dave's iPad, I hope that answers your question. I think dividing is best, but it does produce seeds, and they're cute little powder puff of seeds.
I think it's a good point. You made that point earlier about thinning out the seeds that the kids had planted. That yeah, sometimes people forget that plants will grow bigger, so it's good to look at the spacing recommendations for things.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
especially if you have limited space in the garden. Yeah, always look at the mature size for your plant.
Right, right. We have some of our gardens are a little too tight. We'll plant, what is it? There's a lantana that gets really, really big. And I took a teeny tiny cutting about this tall with just 2 nodes. And in 2 years, it was 6 feet tall.
Wow, wow. My favorite thing about lantana is beautiful, but it also smells like juicy fruit to me.
Oh, okay.
It smells like that juicy fruit gum.
I
My
need to
niece
swap with you, so I have that one. I don't think mine smells like juicy fruit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a variety we've had at the farm for a long time. I don't even know what variety it is, but yeah,
Cool.
my nieces always loved it when they were kids.
Very nice. That's awesome.
All right, we got a few more minutes. Does anybody else have a question for Dawn? All right. Well, hopefully, you'll look into your local school and see how you can help out if they have a garden, or maybe if you're enthusiastic about gardening, maybe talk to someone about how you can start a school garden. I'm sure I think Dawn will tell you that the teachers like the idea of a school garden, but they don't have the time to put into the school garden necessarily. So,
Yes, that's
so,
the challenge.
did someone? Sorry, I saw something pop up here. I thought someone maybe had raised their hand, but it looked like it disappeared.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dawn. It was a wonderful presentation. And hopefully got some people to think about things and about volunteering in the garden. And even though, like you said, they can't go inside the school, maybe there's still a lot of things that school gardens need help with.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I've got 2 responses on my questionnaire, and I will give you guys a ring and try to connect you to the right people that are near you guys, because I think I know the right people. Need to double check exactly where you're at, but we have a community where we connect with all the school gardens, and we try to network with each other so that we can help each other find resources.
Yes, resource sharing is always beneficial.
Yes.
Like you said, if someone has one plant and someone else doesn't have it, yes, I swap seeds and plants with my coworkers all the time. So,
Yes, it is awesome.
yes. And I'll go ahead, I'll send the link out in the follow-up email as well, in case for some reason y'all don't get it today, you'll have it in the follow-up email also. And I'll share the link. I shared the link to Dawn's YouTube page, but I'll share that in the follow-up as well, because she's got a lot of really great videos on there. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for joining us today. The weather, it looks like it's going to get a little bit cooler this week, so, and maybe a little bit of rain. So hopefully all of our gardens will be a little bit greener. I know I have 6-foot tall tomatoes right now because we had a milder than normal summer. So yeah, gardening is always is like I call it gambling a little bit sometimes. Sometimes you get all the things lined up in a row, and sometimes it struggles a little bit, but it's always you're growing things, and that's the important thing.
Yep, there's always something growing.
All right, well, everyone have a wonderful day, and let me put the link for next week's chat, program, which will be Jeff Raska from Texas AgriLife talking about integrated pest management. So that's always a popular question and subject, and about how you can use environmentally friendly ways to kind of help control your pest population. So things like companion planting and when you plant things, and like Dawn said, the shadow of the gardener is the most important thing. So catching the pests early is vital to be able to deal with them. And if any of y'all are interested in learning more about sustainability and fashion, we have a program for Earth Day Every Day coming up this Thursday that will talk about how you can build community and be a little bit more environmentally friendly in how you do fashion, which the fashion industry is actually one of the biggest polluters right now in the world. So what we can do to help that out is always great. All right. I think that's our program for today. So thank you so much, Dawn, and thank you, Bob, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.